What is going on, everybody? 'Tis I, the enigma of the gun airwaves, Miyanovich, welcoming you to Season 3 of the Liberal Gun Owners Lens podcast, where unprecedented perspectives are packed into the cargo hold for the LGO Lens spaceship Voyagio.
That's fucking Italian.
Don't believe that evolution is possible with guns and public safety in America? It's already happening, y'all. Minds are evolving. Think guns versus public safety is the only game in town, do ya? Think culture war is the big boss, do ya? Then keep your ass in the past. Everyone else, all aboard!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Liberal Gun Owners Lens podcast. It's Miyanovich. It's about 5:30 in the morning, and that's the day after we spring forward with the clocks, so it's still kind of 4:30 in the morning for me, and I woke up about 3 hours ago. I woke up about 2.5 hours ago. Why? Oh, lots of reasons. But while I was awake, and while I'm awake in the wee hours of the morning, often, I have thoughts come together in a way that thoughts do not come together at any time of the day or night. Revelations, but more like jabroni revelations, not like major change the world revelations, but thoughts that are able to come together in a unique fashion. And much like other creative endeavors, when these things strike, you need to get them down. You need to record them or write them down as soon as you can. If you don't, you're going to lose them forever. So my version of writing them down, since it has to do with the Liberal Gun Owners Lens and liberalism and guns, is to come in here and turn on the microphone and boogie down with my 80% of awesome, because that's all I have for you. I have the desire to do awesome things, and I'm only ever able to really get to 80% effectiveness with it. Really, I think that's most people. Any expectation that I'm ever going to be able to do any more than that is just a waste of energy for me and for you. So these revelations are 80% of awesome. And I want to talk to you today about something that is related to guns. And if you haven't noticed, we're doing a little bit more of talking politics and society this year, which I avoid typically like the plague because of how much static is out there typically, and how much quote unquote liberals contribute to that static with a constant perseveration upon things going on in society, and then combining that with superficial takes, right? It's not helpful. It feels like it's helpful to the people that are doing it, but mostly it's not, in my estimation. This is Randy during the editing process, throwing something in here. This is something I'm going to try to do more of in the future as I re-listen to these recordings. Do you not like what you see in Washington, D.C.? One of the things you're going to hear from me this year is, why don't you try actual liberalism? And here's how we would start doing that. First and foremost, sorry, but no matter what you're doing, you're not going to be able to try actual liberalism if you don't evolve the process of your own mental operation. You don't have to be highfalutin smart. You don't have to have a degree. It's the wonderful thing about this. But you do have to try to move your brain forward. And why is that? Because we have too many people on our side that are suffering from the same thing, which I have had to fight through and I suffer from also. And that is, please start to consider that the mental operation that you have is largely the result of your brain being optimized by our culture to work inside of a factory. And that's a fact. Most people on the liberal side of the game, I'll speak enough about conservative psychology this year in these upcoming podcasts. But what matters the most is it is important that you start to wrestle with the idea that your mental operation is optimized for you to live a life thinking that everything is supposed to operate and you're supposed to operate like you are inside of a factory. And this type of mentality, this factory psychology, is way too prevalent inside of the left of center reality. Do you not like Donald Trump in office? You cannot tap into the power of liberalism
unless you can tap into the power of your own mind. And almost everyone I know is not even operating at 75% of their own power mentally. And one of the main reasons for that is we are raised in a culture that prefers that you have a brain which operates great inside of a factory environment. You cannot tap into the power of liberalism and have a mind that's optimized to be inside of a factory. You cannot have a mind of somebody who is dominated by factory psychology, waving your finger at Washington, D.C., going, they're doing it wrong. Fascism, authoritarianism, they're doing it wrong. Ask yourself, why were they able to get into the office? Why were they able to get into the office? One reason is them. The other reason is us. We can only change our side. But in the whole change our side thing, you can only change yourself. Do you honestly think with your factory mentality that you are going to be able to do anything significant, showing up at a job every day, paying your bills, voting every 2 and 4 years, waving your finger at the whole thing, and then when it doesn't go your way, it doesn't roll up to your front door, your brain starts to get more extreme, like, it's all fucking anyway, blow it up, assassinate the person, whatever it is, whatever your extremity is. Or you slip into depression or nihilism or something. The reason why these things predictably happen is because your brain is basically formed through culture to operate like it's supposed to be inside of a factory. And you're supposed to show up every day at the building, and the person that's really in charge delivers you the building itself and all of the electricity and all of your computer and your pencils or whatever it is that your dies, your machine, whatever it is that you're supposed to show up in every single thing, and somebody else is supposed to have that for you so that your brain can operate the way that the situation wants your brain to operate, which is like a factory worker. I hear so many of you use the term democracy. First and foremost, it is debatable whether or not we have a democracy. The idea that we have a democracy and what we're seeing is not really democracy. Well, you have to have an actual democracy first. Some people understand that you need to fight for a democracy in order to have it. It's always under threat, or it's always unraveling as a democracy, and you have to continue to fight to try to keep it tight. But we don't actually have a democracy right now. And we didn't actually have a democracy when Obama was in office. This is another discussion. But the reality is I hear so many of you say democracy, 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 fight for democracy. But it is critical that you understand that you cannot have a fucking factory psychology and have a fucking democracy. I'm going to say it again. You cannot have a factory psychology and a democracy. If liberals are the true representatives in society of democracy, then this is the main reason why we cannot and do not and will not have a democracy. You cannot be a person who thinks everything else is supposed to deliver the things for you, and you show up at the things, and your real input is 2 and 4 years, go to the voting booth and occasionally go to a protest. The very system wants you to do that. It's most efficient that you do that. And the very system runs on a myth of supremacy. It runs on a myth that if you do that you can maintain and achieve or fight for a democracy at the polls. Clearly you cannot. Clearly that doesn't work. Clearly that's not enough. Well, what's the main reason? You cannot have a democracy and have the subculture that's supposed to be the gauge for whether or not we have democracy, liberalism. You cannot have that culture being dominated by people who allow the last few centuries of industrialism and corporatism to dominate how your mind operates. And all of that can be reinforced by a million different things. Religion and any other kind of belief system. Anything in your belief system can reinforce the status quo of how your psychology is basically a factory worker's psychology. You cannot have democracy and have a factory worker's psychology. And what is a factory worker's psychology? Go to work, pay your bills. Maybe you have kids, maybe you don't. Go on vacation, look at the news, run your suck on the fucking internet, wave your finger at Washington, D.C., but everything about you is show up at some other place and somebody else is delivering the thing for you. In your subconscious, you expect that democracy is supposed to be delivered for you by something else. And I don't know who fucking taught you that, but that's not how reality works. If it isn't obvious to you, then I don't know what. But I think part of the issue with the factory psychology is you've been taught that you're not powerful enough. You've been taught that it isn't possible for you to have an empowered brain as an individual that can enter into the game and change the game. That's what you've been taught. And that little bit is completely wrong. It is wrong. You do have that power. Doesn't matter if you have a PhD or you don't have a college education, or doesn't matter. You are more powerful than this. And you cannot have a democracy if you have liberalism being dominated by illiberality. And it is dominated by illiberality because it is dominated by factory psychology. And by most people believing in a mythology that they've been sold. Wake up every day, you do the right thing, you have the relationship, maybe you have kids in a house and a thing and a stuff, you go to the vacation, you go to the job, every 2 and 4 years you do the vote, you run your suck on the internet, wave your finger at Washington, D.C., voila, democracy. Or voila, your fucking worldview just delivered to your front door. The very idea that you think these two things will work together is preposterous. There are very few things that work against liberal empowerment more than this mentality, more than this fact. So start to consider the way that your mind operates. Stop allowing your brain to operate like something that has been optimized by Western industrial culture to be a psychology that serves a factory. And it is a super apparent and majorly paradoxical and hypocritical reality that we have, where you have people who are liberals who are talking about freedom, who are talking about equality and diversity, justice, all of these things, while you're simultaneously committed to thinking like a person and living like a person who wants everybody else to deliver the things for you. You cannot be a part of the kind of force that can keep a Donald Trump out of office and maintain that sort of a thing. If you think, I just show up, I just vote every 2 and 4 years. For some of you that are religious, I just am happy with what the Lord delivers me every day. Like, holy shit. It is principally illiberal. It is principally disempowering, principally illiberal. And it is a major contributing factor to why it is that we have a collective that can't pull power together. For whatever reason, the other side has a factory mentality, whether it's the factory of Jesus or the factory of corporatism, or the factory of nationalism, and it seems to work for them. And that's something that in an upcoming episode with Alessandro Padovani, he will bring up. This kind of shit seems to work for them. Limitation seems to work for them. Being narrow and small-minded seems to work amazingly for them. But for us, it doesn't work. And so we have a group of people. We have a tent that is filled with people who cry out for all of these really highfalutin concepts, yet continue to operate and allow themselves to have a brain that has been optimized, frankly, by the other side, that has been optimized by industrialists and corporatists and social architects. By the way, don't think that the other side isn't involved in social architecture. They are involved in social architecture. Social architects that want your brain to operate like you live in a factory.
This year, we're going to be talking about how society connects to the gun concept. And so if you're somebody that's not a liberal and you're listening, some people who listen are not liberals, and your brain is like, I thought this was a gun podcast, I'm going to politely tell you to fuck off. Guns are about so many other things other than guns. If you haven't learned anything from the liberal gun owner's lens, guns are an extension of human nature. There's a yin and a yang to guns, positive and negative. Why is that? Because the yin and the yang is coming from humans, and guns are just a reflection of that. I'm actually pretty excited to later on, potentially this year, to introduce you guys to a paper and a line of thought, theory about how there really is no separation between humans and objects, that humans are optimized for objects. Imagine waking up every day and trying to do anything in your life without objects. Are humans optimized genetically, socially, for objects? Yes, absolutely. How critical is a gun? How critical are projectiles in that reality? If you take the meta view, which is why the anthropillar is in existence, so that you can understand the entire human weapon relationship. How important is the object of a projectile mechanism. Quite important. It has implications for everything that humans do, whether you can realize it or not. This is why, over and over again, I will tell you that if you're trying to be a quote unquote liberal and help the world and help society, but you're just a fucking hobbyist, I assure you, you're not helping the world. I assure you that by being a liberal hobbyist who is into guns, you're really not doing anything exceptional or helpful. It's cool that you participate. I would say it's somewhat helpful that you participate, but as you'll be hearing I don't know when in which order I'm going to be publishing things, but I think it will end up being the next podcast or two. You will hear me say that the era of liberals own guns too is over. It's normalized now. So if you're just somebody who's like, look, we do it too, but all you do is you're a hobbyist and you say, look, we do it too. Sorry, but that's over now. Like, okay, cool. We know liberals own guns too. It's normalized. If your whole bag for the rest of your life is you're a middle-aged male and you're a fucking hobbyist and you're like, look, liberals do it too, and you think that's actually moving the ball down the field, you're wrong. Moving the ball down the field in that fashion only lasted here about 10 years. And that's all that was needed. We don't need to forever and ever and ever have middle-aged men who are hobbyists online who are also liberals saying, look, liberals do it too. Like, there's no more value in that. Between the liberal gun club and liberal gun owners, we've been in every rag. If you don't know what a rag means, like magazine, we've been in every rag. Everybody knows. So it's not really that big of an accomplishment. This is why you need to put childish things aside, put your fucking big pants on, and let's get into the big pants understanding of what guns are. This is why we can also talk about politics and society a little bit, which is the actual reason why we're talking today, or why I'm talking into this mic at ostensibly what is 4:43 in the morning. Drinking yerba mate, of course. Don't hate a playa. Become a playa? I don't fucking know. Anyway, so I guess the short of that is, if you're like, well, I thought this was a gun podcast, you can take that sentiment and when it comes out of your mouth, grab it immediately. I thought this was a gun podcast. Take that sentiment and grab it immediately, and then take your hand, I guess it would be 180 degrees to the rear of your body, and ram that statement that came out of your mouth straight up your fucking asshole. There's a new sheriff in town. I'm fucking done. So today we're going to talk about pseudo-conservatism, what I call Bush League conversion theory, and why you being a us versus them tribal liberal is one of the weakest things you can be. So we're going to talk about pseudo-conservatism, what I call Bush League conversion theory, and the perniciousness of being a tribal liberal. Do you not like what you see? Do you not like what you see in Washington, D.C. right now? Do you not like it? Then start to consider that the way that you do things is not actually evolved enough. Quickly, what do guns have to do with politics? What do guns have to do with what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now? Anthropologically, there are 3 reasons why there are guns. Because there are 3 reasons why there are projectile mechanisms. There are 3 main reasons for it. Where would we find these 3 major reasons? In a research project and writing project that I completed that cost tens and tens of thousands of dollars to do that nobody fucking reads. That's super, super important for all of the things that you want to accomplish. You have to have an advanced logic. If you do not have an advanced logic, you have jabroni logic. If you have jabroni Bush League tribal liberal logic, you are going to get fucking results like Donald Trump being in the White House. End of story. Everything drives from mind. Everything drives from the brand of logic that you're employing. And the logic that is out there is dog shit. If it was good, I wouldn't have directed all of the resources in this way. There are 3 reasons why there are guns. Anthropologically, there's 3 reasons. It doesn't get any more foundational than that. Unless, of course, you look at human behavior and there's 2 reasons for why humans behave. So if you really want to get to the bedrock of all of the logic, there are 2 reasons why humans behave. Survival and reproduction. End of story. That's it. You don't have to complicate it. It's 2 things. survival and reproduction. Even if you don't reproduce, it doesn't matter. Even if you're not into reproduction, it doesn't matter. When you look at the whole of humanity over time, there are two reasons, survival and reproduction. There are three reasons why there are projectiles. One is the acquisition of animal protein. Do we do that much anymore? Well, we still do it a lot. In modern society, we don't rely upon the gun necessarily for the animal protein. We do the farming. It's easier to do the farming. But we're talking about over the entirety of humanity, things that affect the development of our genetics, the epigenetic reality, also the social reality. So the first reason is the acquisition of animal protein. The second reason is the expression of interpersonal violence, offensive or defensive. And the third reason, which is a very, very important reason, is social coercion. Getting outcomes in your own land, in your own state, in your own country, or in the world, getting outcomes that you desire for your group, for your society. Projectiles are a major part of that, even today, every day they are. It's just invisible. It's invisible to most people's minds. But social coercion is what's going on in society. You have different worldviews competing to get different outcomes. This is principally human. You cannot stop it. And you will never have a Beigist, completely universal mono society where there's just one group, one worldview. You'll never have it. You will always have two groups at least. There will always be competing interests, always be conflicts of interest, and there will always be social coercion. That means that if you have a particular worldview, you need to be hip to social coercion. Projectiles are a part of social coercion. They're a very significant part of social coercion. However, they are not the only tool for social coercion. And oftentimes, guns and projectiles are the worst tool for social coercion. And oftentimes, the people who think that they know exactly when guns need to be used for social coercion, these are the last people who fucking understand the actual reality of social coercion, the actual underlying nature of things, cause and effect. If you don't like what you're seeing in Washington, D.C., what you're looking at is the game of social coercion. Guns have a little bit to do with this, but guns are just really inside of the bullpen of things that you use for social coercion. So we need to be able to talk about just social coercion. And I will tell you a little bit as we go today about why guns would matter in a situation like this. Generally speaking, conservatism is a worldview and a mindset that is not inclusive. It is disclusive. As a matter of fact, all tribal parameters, all groups are disclusive. I don't even know if that's a word. What opposite of inclusive? I guess it's disclusive. Non-inclusive? I don't really care. I'm going to say disclusive today. It's really not that important. Conservatism is not inclusive. It's disclusive. And there is a long-standing history of conservative thought, particularly rooted in religious thought, that discludes people. But we already have, without religious thought and without conservatism, we already have hundreds of thousands of years of disclusive thought, disclusive behavior, disclusive mentalities coming from the deep tribal DNA of humans, which is very real. So at the basis, humans are in one way or another disclusive. If you think that liberals and leftists aren't disclusive, then you should fucking pull my other leg. It plays fucking jingle bells. Everybody does it. Disclusiveness can be particularly pernicious inside of people who have a psychological trait known as disgust trait. Well, we all have disgust trait. We're all disgusted by something deep in our psyche. But conservatives score extra high on disgust trait. While I'm not here to say every single person that's a conservative is a Nazi, and while I think it's important to point out that conservatives aren't any kind of socialist, that makes calling every one of them a Nazi, or many of them Nazis, super fucking inaccurate many times. Totalitarian, authoritarian, fascist, much more accurate. We see in history the example of really high disgust trait. High tribalism, high disgust trait. High disgust trait is definitely a principal feature of conservatism. And it is, when combined with religious thought, like we have seen over 2,000 years, you get high disgust rate and disclusion that travels into the realm of lethality. That's also not just conservatives that do that. Humans do that. Tribal humans do that. But this is a particularly potent brand of disgust trait and disclusion. For thousands of years, Christian behavior and Christian philosophy, but mostly just we could say Christian behavior, has contributed to very high disgust trait and disclusion. Although there's a tendency in the religious world for conservative Christians to advertise that they believe in Jesus and Jesus loves everybody and everybody can come in and let's wrap our arms around everybody. And that's what's often advertised. Factually, that's not really what happens most of the time. That Christian circles are highly tribal and disclusive and sectarian. And so that advertisement about everybody come to Jesus and we're all together in this and my Lord and my Savior accepts everybody. Yeah, that does happen sometimes. But generally speaking, in practice, most of that Christian force, most of that Christian philosophy is underneath actually quite non-inclusive or disclusive and has contributed to bigotry, overwhelmingly so. If you are not aware of that, then I don't know what to tell you. And so understanding the forces of conservatism is always quite important relative to bigotry. It's always important. Are left-wingers doing that kind of shit? Sure. Have left-wingers been doing this for thousands of years in the way has historicity or can be measured by just looking at basic history? Absolutely not. There isn't any analog for Christian conservative bigotry and the lack of inclusion and high disgust rate. There isn't any analog for it really in the West. Other religious people have the same shit going on throughout the world, but we can measure easily, Western conservative thought and Western conservative Christian worldview and connect it directly to bigotry and xenophobia and see how it, particularly in the realm of anti-gay sentiment, how these things all combine to bringing a lethal, charging up bigotry to the point where people feel compelled to harm gay people physically or kill them. Certainly, we can look into the history and see that these same kinds of forces, bigotry, righteousness, high disgust rate, lack of inclusiveness, like existential arrogance, have contributed to negatives delivered to females and people of color, etc. But certainly it's quite easy to measure Christian conservative thought in terms of harming gay people. Quite important. Hence, guns. In many instances, when a person is weak for many reasons, for any reason, a gun could be a great equalizer. And that's not only just point 2 in the 3 anthropologic reasons for guns, interpersonal defensive force. That's also part 3, social coercion. Conservative Christians, many of them, and conservatives in general, want the world to go in a certain direction. And they want to coerce the world to go in a certain direction. And people who aren't that way want to coerce the world into going in some other direction. It's understandable why women and gay people or African Americans in the late 20-teens, after George Floyd, are flocking to guns. It's not just about interpersonal defense. White people have enjoyed the coercive power of guns for centuries and have employed the coercive power in guns to craft and move society in a direction that benefits themselves for centuries. So when people who aren't white, financially strong, freeholders, when people aren't that way and they finally find their way to it, well, now it's their turn. To do what we white people have been able to do for centuries. I always find that interesting with the Democrats not wanting guns really to be a part of things. Now, finally, the African American community has found its way to the heart of this right, this particular right. They finally, in my estimation, stepped into it. And that's really starting. The great examples being NAGA, or the great examples being Chad King and Kofi Kenyatta and our friends at the Black Bottom Gun Club in Detroit. So I always find it interesting that after hundreds of years of white people being able to have access to guns and use it for coercive purposes, and by the way, the vast majority of the coercive purposes of guns are happening just in the subconscious mind. They're not ever used. They're not brandished. People aren't being ogres with them. It's just the very presence of them presents a predicament for anybody that wants to easily take advantage of another person. I find it interesting that just right now, the Black community is finding their way to this particular power, and while the Democrats simultaneously want the right to be eradicated, essentially is what they want. I find that interesting. Of course, many of us find it interesting that the Democrats are completely blind to this. Hundreds of years of social coercion. By the way, a social coercion that's not going to go away. If they get everything that they want with gun control, social coercion with guns, social coercion relative to guns will not go away. And the people that have guns after that will be the ones who get to enjoy the benefit of that social coercion, which happens again, mostly at the subconscious level of the mind. I digress. It's important to understand why it is that conservatism presents itself perniciously in its own fashion in this country, particularly when conservatism and Christianity specifically are combined together. Now, after somebody who has spent a lot of time, years and years of my life in, well, some people would consider spiritual pursuits, research and study and practice. I have had friends from all walks of life, all denominations, all religions, all spiritual traditions. Have been friends with priests and monks, and obviously I'm friends with a rabbi now. But I have been friends with all kinds of highfalutin religious and spiritual people. And I think it's really, really important to highlight something, and that is, for many people involved in that world, it gets pretty apparent that there's a difference oftentimes between cut and paste religion and following a religion in a cut and paste fashion, and the people that are actually following the heart and the spirit of the religion or the spiritual tradition. There's a difference. And the people that do cut and paste religion remain in the superficial realm of that tradition. And so that superficial realm is the realm that is the most susceptible to manipulation and toxicity and hypocritical behavior, massively hypocritical behavior. And that is the vast majority of people who have religion in the world. The Dalai Lama was asked, like, how many Tibetan monks are actually doing it for the right reasons? Who are actually doing it right, for the right reasons, not superficially. And the Dalai Lama said probably 1 out of 10. That's his own crew. He's judging his own crew. So I think that's fair for all other religions too. About 1 out of 10 are actually walking the path. Everyone else is doing some pseudo version of it with loads of hypocrisy inside of what they're doing. So what does this have to do with what's going on in DC right now? What the fuck does this have to do with guns? This is what that has to do with guns. This is what it has to do with guns. Almost everyone listening to this is involved in the desire for social coercion, and you're considering the guns place inside of social coercion in this current era that we're in the current situation that we're in 2025. You're considering it. You're thinking about it. And I'm here to tell you, if you're living your life and then Trump gets in office and then you're immediately like going to thinking about guns, whether that's self-defense or boogaloo or whatever it is, you're doing it wrong. Or that's the proper primitive reaction, I would say. But this is why you need a Sifu. This is why you need a teacher. This is why you need somebody to help you to lead. Because if you just do that, you react and then you go right to guns. You think about guns. That could be joking about assassinating Trump, joking about assassinating corporatists, thinking about boogaloo, thinking about defending yourself. That's the primitive reaction. That's the primitive reaction, and that's a normal primitive reaction. But you need to then, once it happens, transcend the primitive reaction. You see, you need to transcend the primitive reaction because the primitive reaction is hyperbolic. It's never fully accurate. It's never accurate enough. And it is definitely not accurate enough for effective social coercion. It's not accurate enough. It is designed for you to be out on the savannah dealing with saber-toothed tigers. It is not designed for this level of complexity with social coercion. And it is draining your attention away from what you should be focusing on, which is not guns. If you don't like Trump in office, why are you still spending so much time thinking about guns or whatever? It's always important. If you're gay right now, the vast majority of what you should be doing for self-defense, likely in most cases, has nothing to do with guns. You need to be doing other things to get your shit straight, and probably guns too. Self-defense training is what I'm talking about.